Hello and good afternoon and welcome to LVS Perspectives number 17, Future Skills in the Workforce. And it's really great to see Matt Searle here, finally after our power cut a couple of weeks ago. Matt leads the Employer Relationship Management and Events Strategy for the award-winning careers team at Henley Business School at the University of Reading. He regularly speaks at conferences and commentates on talent management in the press and has been featured in Forbes, People Management magazine and R15, a recruitment industry website. So Matt, thank you very much for coming to us this morning and talking, or I should say this afternoon, talking to us about all the things you do and future skills for the workforce. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Christina. It's such a pleasure to be speaking to you today, and I'm really hoping that the power stays on both our sides for us to have a good discussion today. So if we, I've got to do a Chris Whitty and say next slide, please, each time. So if we could move on to the next slide, thanks very much. So today, I'd like to cover off a little bit about me and about Henley Business School, and then go into some of the key trends in the world of work today and explore what skills might be prevalent in the future world of work as well. And then a little bit around some of the action that we might consider taking, just to open up a little bit of the discussion. I would really value questions, so I think Christine's going to take those at the end of the presentation and feed them through to me. So thanks very much. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So this is me. So I am Head of Relationship Management at Henley Business School. And just to give you a tiny bit of background on the business school. So we're based at the University of Reading, just down the road. And we've got about 8,000 students from about 92, 93 different countries. And we're a full service business school. So we have undergraduate students, postgraduate students, as well as MBA students, and those who are a little bit more experienced studying executive MBAs with us. So I have a fantastic role in which I get to speak to many different industry experts. And my role really is to open doors for all of those students, ideally, to get jobs after they graduate, and jobs which they love after they graduate. So on a day-to-day basis, I could be talking to a startup, a tech startup, just down the road in Reading, all the way up to a senior managing director at places like Oracle and Microsoft, and everything in between. So I have a fairly good view of what's happening, I think, in industry. I've got about 20 years of experience of relationship management, recruitment, and event management. And before Henley, I used to work at KPMG, which is one of the big four professional services firms in student recruitment marketing. So kind of a bit of a poacher turned gamekeeper, I think that's what it's called. And in my spare time, I'm a trustee at Manchester Metropolitan Students' Union, a non-executive director at a growing consultancy based in Brighton. And I'm a big rugby fan, so I'm a coach and I lead our communications strategy at Camberley Rugby Club, again, just down the road from you. And I'm a keen cook, proud father, and armchair sports fan. And if we could move to the next slide, please. I want to set the scene a bit, just to give you a bit of an indication of what's happening in recruitment, because I think it kind of sets the scene quite nicely for what I'm going to say, to give you a bit of an idea of how some organizations are attracting and selecting their future recruits. And I'm not going to talk through every single icon there, but I did just want to pull out artificial intelligence, the second one along. And what we're seeing, is one of these trends that's happening right now, and will, move into the future, is that organizations are using artificial intelligence rather than using people to search for keywords on CVs and application forms and things. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as something that's happening at the moment, and it kind of sort of concretes what I'm going to say a bit later on. So if we could move to the next slide. So from my perspective, what are some of the key trends in the world of work right now? And I think there's four which really are quite prevalent at the moment. The first one is around workforce flexibility. So I think, with some of the organizations that we work with, what they're really valuing from their people is the propensity to adapt and go with the flow. and to show that adaptability and flexibility. So I think the idea around this is that because business is changing so fast, particularly at the moment with everything that's happening with COVID, the idea is that the role that you're recruited for might not always be the role that you do in 2 or 3 years' time. So that adaptability and flexibility is a key trend and a key behaviour that we want to try to support our future workforce with. And the second one there is about ongoing education to upskill and reskill. And again, this is coming out particularly out of COVID, but has been going on for a while. And I think, for speaking from someone who works at a university is certainly not the end of the learning journey. And I think it's just the beginning. And what we're finding is that organizations are coming back to the business school to say, can you help us with our management training for our future leaders? So again, it's that kind of ability for someone to be, always hungry to learn and open to new experiences. My third point here is around social mobility and inclusion and diversity. And I think it's fair to say that over the last few years, there's been a major push from large organizations, which I can see now trickling down to small, fast-growing businesses as well, to really widen the pool of people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that are coming into their business. I think the challenge is going to be the recruiting a diverse force is probably the easy part, and then the inclusion part is probably the more difficult part for some of these businesses. So we've got, completely different types of people coming into a business. How, what support are they getting to stay and then really, fly in their career? I think that's something that's going to become quite a major differentiator for some employers. And finally, I wanted to put on here apprenticeships versus graduate schemes. So again, I came from a Big Four professional organization, and when I was there probably about 4 years ago, the percentage of graduates versus apprenticeships was about 80% graduates coming into the business versus about 20% apprenticeships. What I've seen at both the organisation I used to work at and other organisations that I work with on a day-to-day basis is that balance is becoming a little bit more even. So these firms are taking on more apprentices, rather than graduates, which I think is really quite interesting, both from a kind of supply perspective and a demand perspective. So I think we've got people who have joined today whose children might be at that stage of perhaps choosing university or choices to go into A-levels and things. I would just say that the apprenticeship schemes that are out there right now are being viewed much more on a par as graduate schemes. So I think there's certainly something to look at in detail, and clearly with the apprenticeship route, there may be that may be preferable to some to potentially avoid some of the heavy debts that are coming out of sort of associated with going to university at the moment. So certainly something to consider, I think, for some of our audience today. We could move on to the next slide. I wanted to give you now a little bit more detail on some of the skills and behaviours that I think are prevalent right now and will be in the future. And I'm going to look at 3 areas. I'm going to tell you a bit about my own research around the performance of placement students, and I'll go into a bit of detail on that. And then I'm going to talk about Dr. Pasha's career dynamism research. Now, Dr. Pasha's my boss, so really familiar with her research, which is a fascinating piece of reading. And then I want to kind of zoom out a bit and look at some of the World Economic Forum data as well, just to make sure that we're looking external as well as our own internal data for you. So if we could move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to go into a bit of detail here. So to give some context, we have historically over the past 3 or 4 years have had about 100 of our students out on industrial placements. So these are placements that last typically between 9 and 12 months. and are undertaken between a third year and a fourth year of university. And these are fantastic experiences for our students that they all get these themselves. We don't place people, that our students are successful in the recruitment processes themselves. And they're a fantastic experience for them to really, work in a full-time role for such a long period of time, and the change in them is just incredible. And to support them when they're on their placement, we undertake a visit about halfway through, which is a little bit like a performance review. And we chat with their line managers and the students themselves around these 9 behaviours that we've identified as being, super important for our students to develop, both when they're on the placement and when they're at their on their courses. And if we could move on to the next slide, please. Here's a bit of an overview of the results of those from a couple of years ago, which is really interesting to look at. So, the employer view of our students is that they're rated highest for working in teams, for their resilience and their flexibility, their time management, and around some of their communication, which is great. More importantly for me, I think it's looking at where employers are rating our students a little bit lower, and we could do a bit more in the curriculum around these areas, and I've got some detail on that for us to look at. And critical thinking comes up quite a lot, and it will come up all the way through my talk to you today. So this is not the last time you'll hear about critical thinking. And also commercial awareness and personal responsibility and impact. And if we could go to the next slide, the students also review themselves. So our placement students rate themselves highest also for teamwork, time management, confident communication, and commitment to personal development. And they're rating themselves lowest again for critical thinking, and in particular this year around listening and interpreting. So we've always got that kind of self-reflection piece coming through these as well, which I think is really interesting. If we could go to the next slide. So in terms of self-awareness of our placement students, my analysis shows that students rated significantly higher by employers than themselves. So the students are better than they think in resilience and flexibility, listening and interpreting, and time management. And the only area where students rated themselves higher, was commercial awareness. So the employers are saying to us, Matt, your students are not as commercially aware as they think they are. So please, I think the output from that is, please could you do a bit more work with them on that before they come in. And I've also done a gender comparison. The females are outperforming the males overall. Apart from in commercial awareness and commitment to personal development. So if we could go on to the next slide, what does that all mean? So it could mean that before our students undertake their placement year, they may need a bit more support and help with critical thinking and commercial awareness, which I alluded to. We always want to celebrate as well, so we should celebrate that they're very strong in teamwork. And just to note here, our female students are outperforming our male students overall. But they don't think they are. So this is around kind of maybe an empowerment piece, and just doing, a little bit more kind of work with those particular students. So I thought that was a little bit of insight into some of the current skills for the world of work. And now, if we go on to the next slide, I want to talk about a model for the future world of work. Now, this is Dr. Nima Pasha's research from the Henley Business School. And what Dr. Pasha found was that she interviewed around 100 people who work in business roles. And her research showed that those people who had a results orientation, a focus on relationship management, and were very adept and flexible at using resource widely, had a stronger career resilience and a a higher propensity for promotion. And the words are quite small in yellow there, but there are some that I really want to pull out. So just related to relationship management, Pasha found that those with networking and people skills, openness and creativity, achievement and focus, a real laser-like focus, I think she found. Those that were adept at analysing data and could pull out what that data meant and explain it. So the critical thinking piece, again, were the people that had a stronger career resilience. And that really was all down to self-reliance, very much kind of pushing forward that, it's very much down to an individual related to their career success rather than having it all paved for you. So I thought there was some interesting thoughts there that we might be able to explore a little later on during the questions and answers and discussion. Hopefully. If we could go on to the next slide. So these are the skills and behaviours that the World Economic Forum produced a couple of years ago, and for 2022, which is not that long away. And I think the key takeaway for me, again, the words are quite small there. I think the growing side, again, you can see number 5 there is critical thinking. And I think this could be summarized as the skills which are going to grow could be described as the more human skills. And the ones that are declining can typically be undertaken now by computers and robots. I think that is the key takeaway, is the human skills are the ones which I think are going to be really very prevalent for the future world of work. So if we move on to the next slide, here's some ideas about some of the action that we might consider taking. And in the business school, this is what we've been doing. And I guess it shines a bit more of a light on what a head of relationship management does in a careers team at a business school. So to really support our students with their critical thinking, we've done a lot more with employers in the curriculum. And in some ways, by doing it in the curriculum, our students don't really have a choice about whether they do it or not. So it's very much providing real life case studies that they undertake as part of their degree and real life business projects as well. We've been doing a lot more with our students on asking them about, why do they think in a certain way, or why do they not think in this way, and really try to encourage debate and, a greater acceptance of different points of view to really help them with that critical thinking. In terms of commercial awareness, we run a whole suite of activities with employers at Henley. Certainly in the autumn term, we'd be running something nearly every single day or even twice a day. And in the spring term, we've very busy at the moment. And again, what we're trying to do is set up these experiences for our students with real industry professionals, so our students can practice and get comfortable with making mistakes in a safe environment. Because if they do it with us, hopefully they'll learn from those mistakes and really build their resilience for when they enter the workforce. I think, to also to look at commercial awareness, we're encouraging our students to really research the businesses that they're applying to. It's fairly easy now to find out that information, via media and via company reports and all sorts via Google and everything like that. I think the key thing is, again, it's to try to articulate why that's important and to look at whether that the values and the ethics of the company really matches a student's own ethics. I think that's probably what's going to be coming next. And in terms of building resilience, and I talked about this a little bit just a few moments ago, we have a Resilient You program for staff and students to try to help them articulate what's going on. Experiential learning opportunities, as I said, and really for me, I think it's all very well having, how do you explain how resilient you've been in a job interview question. So I think there's something around here of supporting our students in how they articulate their experiences for success in the future. And my last slide, if we could go to it, is my conclusion. So I think it's all around purpose, and it's supporting our students, finding out, really trying to find out what they love, and mixing that with what the world needs, what our students' strengths are, and importantly, to undertake something that pays as well. And I think if we can better support our students, from their early years right through to when they join a university and beyond, that we'll be supporting people to find their purpose a little bit earlier in their career, which I think can only be a good thing. So that's mainly me kind of talking for about 20 minutes at you. Hopefully that has given you a little bit of a break from working from home, or maybe even from some of your homeschooling. I'm going to get a sip of water, and I'm really hoping that there's been a few questions. I'm very happy to kind of go back to anything in a bit more detail if that's what's required. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you, Matt. So if you do have any questions and you want to feed them through on the Facebook chat, that'd be great. While you were talking, I had a few questions, so I'm going to probably jump in first if you don't mind, and observations as well. And about resilience and flexibility, you've paired the two up together. Could you explain a little bit more why they're paired together?
I think it's probably because when our students are on placement, I think they sometimes think that the job that they're going to go into is going to be completely like the job description that they were given, and I think very quickly they understand that things change, the business might change, their line manager might leave, the area of their business could quickly explode, increase in demand. So I think it's very much about showing that flexibility to cope with that change. Was really what we were getting at with looking at that particular behaviour that we do when we're doing the placement results.
And with resilience, how do you, because it's very sort of, it's the word, isn't it, at the moment, resilience. How do we build resilience? What do you do, and what's your advice to young people to build resilience? I mean, at LVS, hopefully we give enough experiences, and we often say you will fall down, you will make mistakes, but you dust yourself down and off you go. What advice do you give to young people about resilience? How do you do it?
Yeah, a great question, and something we're exploring at the moment actually in the team. So it's as just building on what you said. Really, it's about not being afraid to try and to fail, and to really note that if you do fail, what have you learned from it, and then kind of thinking about, okay, well, if I learn from it, what would I do differently next time? And then, as I was getting to with the articulation, I think it's about having a little story to tell in an interview situation about, typically, almost every role I've kind of worked with employers on, they would ask, tell me about a time you failed, or tell me about a time when you've learned something about yourself. So that's all around resilience. And it's just having that, at school and at university, that's the time to try new things and to try to get those life experiences, and when it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them. So I guess my advice would be to just don't be scared, try new things. It doesn't matter at this stage of your life whether when things go wrong. It's about can you dust yourself down, can you learn from them, and can you then explain why and what you've learned, and hopefully improve next time.
Right, and going on to behaviour skills as well, because obviously in a school like ours, we've got lots of opportunities for D&V, taking up new skills, developing ourselves as human beings as well. And the whole subject of AI is fascinating. Where are you seeing the developments of AI taking off, and how's it affecting the careers that young people are going into?
Yeah. So I do. It's an exciting area. I think there's, if I can be candid, I think there may well be some challenges with some of the computer logic being, written, and perhaps it doesn't always take into account, everybody in the world. There's plenty of examples of, driverless cars not recognizing different skin color, and all sorts of examples out there. That's very scary. So I do think that, you know, to recruit a diverse pool of people into those roles is absolutely essential. I think in terms of AI and recruitment, um, I'm really happy to say I used to work for an organisation that received, you know 18 to 20,000 applications for 900 to 1,000 places. That's a lot of application forms for a person or a team of people to read. Um, where I think that some organizations are going is utilizing artificial intelligence to look at that volume in a much quicker way. Um, but in terms of advising students, the advice is actually the same as what I would advise for an organization that hadn't got AI. And I'll try to explain. So as a recruiter, someone looking at CVs and application forms, you are looking at keywords, you are looking at those you know those particular qualifications or those particular phrases because you have a rubric to go through. So actually the process is the same. The robot or the artificial intelligence is looking for the same thing, it's just doing it a lot quicker. The advice for me, it doesn't change that much, because the approach is the same. It's just done a bit quicker by the AI.
Just homing in on that, because that's really interesting,
Yeah,
because with older children who have been going through the process of recruiting for jobs, especially in the finance industry, the hoops that they have to go through online before they even get to meet a human being. And
yeah,
obviously there's only so much you can glean about a job online and what's actually looking for. So it's really harsh, isn't it? The stuff you have to go through. I mean, are any tips in there?
yeah, and that I agree with that, and my students say that as well. So what I what we try to do is to open up opportunities for our students to try to engage with some of the people who are working at that organization, to try to glean a little bit more information about the culture of the business and about what it's really like to work there. And our alumni are hugely powerful when it comes to that. So we've got some 76,000 alumni, I think, at the moment, probably 82,000 now that we've gone into a new year, where those types of conversations that our students can have, again, they're not being our students are not being assessed or judged, or it's not part of the recruitment process. It's what we call kind of informational conversations, for our students to try to understand the culture and the work a little bit better. So that would be my advice: is to try to, um, you know, get on LinkedIn, and perhaps utilize some of the alumni from the school, or from networks that you might be part of, to try to say, look, I'm really interested in working at HSBC. Um, would you have half an hour just to have a phone call with me, just so I can ask you a few questions? And it's highly unlikely that a person will get you the job, but they will give you an insight into the culture that you can then kind of feed back through the application process. But I do understand it can be quite, um, it can make people feel quite down that they're just submitting form after form after form, doing test after test after test until they actually get to meet someone in the recruitment process. So I would say, well, can you step outside of that process and then try to meet people in that way?
Yeah, and I think more and more we're seeing that networking is so key, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
Absolutely. And we have a World of Work group, the WOW group,
Excellent.
which is
Oh,
how I think I got your contacts in the first place. And it is
super.
amazing how much knowledge and depth you can get from other people, you know, about what's happening out there. And it's slightly controversial then, I suppose, in life it is a bit about who you know, isn't it?
A little bit. I think though that there are so many schemes now that these large banks and accountancy firms are running to really widen the pool of people that they're bringing in. I mean, there's so many social mobility schemes out there now that people can access, and I think where that started, I think the law firms got that right probably about 10 to 12 years ago. They realized that they had a real lack of particularly black students kind of making it through to the bar. And I think they realized, right, we need to really focus on outreach now, and we need to really then retain those people so that they then become role models for the future generation coming through. So I would say that it's never there's so many out there now. It's fantastic. They need to do more, and I think at university we're really trying as well to make our students aware of those schemes. So yeah, it is about a little bit about the network that you currently have. But I would say again, it's probably never been easier to get in touch with someone who's outside of your network. It's just kind of giving those students the confidence and the tools to be able to do that successfully.
How have you coped with the work placement year with COVID? How have you managed
that? Good question. So it's been, I think our students have really developed their resilience when it's come to COVID, and we got a bit of a heads up what was coming in about January. So we had a student who was based in China, and he was telling us about he had to work from home, and there was lockdowns, and we could kind of probably along with everyone else see that the virus spreading into Europe. We had some students who'd gone on holiday to northern Italy who had to self-isolate when they came back. So we kind of sort of saw this coming a bit, and we thought at the time it might just be a couple of weeks working from home. And now here I am still in this 5x3 cube. So I think we in all seriousness, we really did work very hard to provide our students with a great level of support during that time, and our employers as well. So the vast majority of our students work from home. So that but by that stage the employers they got their laptops and they knew their managers. There were a few that were furloughed. So we had a few in the car industry and auto industry, and in the travel industry that did go on furlough. And I think they just took it in their stride, really. They really understood what was going on. And from a university and business school perspective, we were there throughout to provide that support. They could have counselling, or they could have a chat with a careers coach, maybe to make use of that time. If they could do a LinkedIn training course, could they undertake our professional certificate? There are plenty of opportunities there, but we didn't want to force either. We were in that kind of tightrope of everyone is what is it, we're all in the same storm, but we're all in a different boat. So we didn't want to push it, and we didn't want to make students think that they had to do something. It was a lot about listening, I think, in that from March to about June. And then, so that was the cohort that's just come out. We've got ones that started in between June and September. I think it's much more difficult for them. So some of them have never been in the office. They've never met their managers face to face. And for them, it's a completely different experience working virtually. So far, I believe they've all been performing really, really well. We're just about to start the placement visits again. So in a month's time, I might have a bit more of a story around that for you. But again, I think overall they've coped very well with the change and with the with the situation. And I think it's incredible really at 19, 20 years of age that they're able to work from home and they're able to undertake the work that our employers are kind of giving them. And this is real work. This is looking at marketing, marketing at L'Oreal. This is working at Deloitte in audit. This is these are real fantastic, meaty, important jobs for those businesses. And by and large, our students really, they perform so well. I mean, I didn't put the scores up on the slide, but they're getting fours out of 5, 8.5, 9 out of 10 for nearly every single behaviour, which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. And also with work experience, because our pupils missed out on work experience last summer, and it all came upon us too quickly, didn't it? But this year, yeah. we've got to go for it. We've got to get those skills and understanding about the workforce. And there's some good platforms now for work experience. Any tips there where we might look?
Yeah. So I think one to look at would be Bright Network. So I think they had about a million views of their platform. I have to check that, sorry. But about a million views of their platform in the summer, where they helped some of the really big businesses move their internships and work experience, year 12 work experience online. So I would definitely have a look at Bright Network. And then another one that springs to mind would be Rate My Placement. So again, you're able to Google those or use any search engine for those to find out those opportunities. I would say though, what I'm hearing from those employers, certainly for the summer, for Easter holidays and summer holidays, that they're still very much virtual experiences. I think until March the 8th, I think it is the latest date for reviewing the lockdown. I can't really see any face-to-face experiences happening. Certainly in the city and in some of the larger professional services firms.
Great. And
sorry. On the positive of that, there's opportunities to work virtually in those organisations that wouldn't have been there if they were face to face. So I think I can't remember which of the big four it was, but maybe PwC. So sorry, EY and Deloitte, KPMG, if I've got this wrong. But they, one of them opened up the opportunity for virtual work experience to everyone who had applied. So rather than having, say, 100 interns, they ended up with 10,000. So there's opportunities that are coming out of the crisis that wouldn't have been there before. And I think it's really important to, as much as we can, to take the positives.
That's lovely. As you say, a silver lining in there, isn't there? And it's actually opened up more opportunity for more people as well. And talking about opportunities with apprenticeships, are there kind of some surprising apprenticeships out there, things that you didn't think might happen?
Good question. So I think probably one of what I've noticed is that with apprenticeships, I'll take accountancy because that's probably where I can talk with a little bit more authority than some of the others. But to be a qualified accountant, if you were kind of looking at before 2014, say, you would do your 3 years or 4 years at university, then you would do a 3-year professional qualification to become a qualified accountant. So you're looking at 6 years, maybe 7 years to finally become qualified. If you're now looking at the apprenticeship route, you can do the study and the work experience at the same time. So you actually could be qualified in 3 or 4 years without the university debt and the accommodation debt that for some people is really ramping up to be, can be 45, 50, 60,000 pounds when people are graduating. So I do think that there is certainly it's certainly something to look at for people who want to get qualified a little bit quicker. I guess on the flip side, and obviously speaking from a university, with the apprenticeship route, you may not get the university experience, which is in my opinion so valuable. So it's the university experience is not just about the degree; it's about all of the clubs and societies, all the different people that you meet, all of the the opportunities to interact with people who are not like you, which is very valuable as well. So yeah, I think there's that one. I haven't really answered your question though, have I? I think there's certainly some interesting looking opportunities in cybersecurity. So I do think that is a growing area for the country, and I do think that there's certainly apprenticeships there that could be of interest to people. And not slightly related to your question, but not apprenticeships. I was on a call last night where there were roles coming up, such as chief welfare officer, someone responsible for helping people to work from home effectively. So there are roles that are coming up which don't exist yet, and I think that's why I sort of focus my presentation really much more on the skills and behaviours that are going to be required than job roles, because some job roles will be obsolete in the next few years, and I think COVID has in some ways accelerated that by 10 or 15 years. There's the forced innovation that some businesses have gone through, and universities and schools that have gone through has just been incredible. And I think what we'll see is what has worked will stick, and what hasn't worked will revert fairly quickly back to how it was before. The networking for me it is very hard to do online. So we would typically run an event and then have conversations afterwards over a glass of something and some nibbles, and that's where the relationships really get cemented with the industry experts and our students. And for us, that's been really hard to replicate online. I think we're there now, with kind of setting little mini challenges in Zoom breakout rooms for those conversations to happen, and those experiences for our students to be able to network and chat with an industry expert and not be assessed or judged is just so important. I'm sure it's important for your students too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing, is things are moving so fast, and as you say, flexibility and adaptability. If you told me a year ago I'd be doing this,
yeah,
I would have thought you were crazy.
Indeed,
we've got a TV studio. And what I take my hat off to our students here at LVS. They've been amazing, and talk about building resilience. Their resilience, their hard work, their determination, because this is not easy. No. I take my hat off to them. So any LVS students out there and their parents, you're amazing. So Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to talk to you. Really great. I'm sure I'd love to pick up the conversation again with you in a couple of months' time and see where we are. So but thank you very much for joining us. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Great. Have a lovely weekend. And just from me, the LVS Perspectives 18 next week is not on a Friday. It's Thursday. And it's going to be running 2 to 3 p.m. And the reason why is next Thursday we have Will Manning joining us. Will is a past pupil of LVS, and you might recognise the name, the Capital Radio DJ. And the reason why we have to do it at 2 to 3 is because he's on Capital Radio till 1 o'clock. So I'm really thrilled that Will Manning is joining us for Thursday Perspectives number 18, an audience with Will Manning. All right, so tune in, don't forget. Thursday 2 to 3 o'clock. So thank you. Any questions for me? I'm always here, always ready to Zoom. The virtual door is open. Have a lovely weekend. Bye bye.